Hello and welcome to Casually Criterion. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Today we will be going over what's on our minds in regards to movie news and what we've been watching. And then we'll move into a feature review of Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread. And then at the end of the episode, we'll actually be discussing what is each of our favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
And if you want to follow along with the podcast, talk to us, follow along with what we're going to be watching next, be reviewing next, send in any questions you want us to talk about with a particular film. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. We also have a group on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/casuallycriterion. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion, or you can email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. And before we get into the review, let's talk about what's on our minds, what's going on in the movie world. And first up, Mike, what do you got?
All right. Well, actually, there is an interesting piece that came out talking about Martin Scorsese's movie, The Irishman, which he's actually filming right now for Netflix. And it says that this budget has actually started to increase. It started out around $125 million, which is a lot for a Netflix movie. But then apparently it has gone up to like $140 million and climbing. And the rumor has it it's because they're going to be implementing some of that de-aging technology. The same kind that you see so often in, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, some of the Marvel movies.
Star Wars was the most recent.
Star Wars, yeah. So it's becoming more and more prevalent in movies, and apparently it's expensive. And so it's going to be de-aging the actors like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino to make them look like their younger versions. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little skeptical. The only time I've ever actually seen this pulled off convincingly would probably be in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, whenever they did a young Kurt Russell.
Yeah, that was really good.
I didn't see that one. I remember it looking okay in Benjamin Button.
He was also in The Dark.
Yeah, I think they took measures to ensure that it wasn't like
that's
really,
a long time ago too.
Glaring.
The Benjamin Button.
Yeah. Anyways, so it could end up making this movie ridiculously expensive, but I guess that doesn't matter as long as Netflix is willing to fork over the bill, right?
Yeah. I wonder how long, because it seems like the price keeps going up. I wonder if that's going to be a major chunk of the movie is while they're young and they're just going to de-age them the whole time. I think it works if it's just a short amount of time in a movie that they do the de-aging stuff. But like in...
sounds pretty prominent.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling they might be doing that with the new Indiana Jones movie too, but that's for a different topic, I suppose.
I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Like, I guess you said it worked in the one movie, but like, if you notice it in a movie and it's bad, like, does it tend to like ruin the movie altogether for you guys? Or does it bother you a whole lot?
It's hard to say. It bothered me in Rogue One when they had a completely uncanny valley version of an actor who's long dead, Peter Cushing. They brought his character back, and he had a prominent part in the movie, and it took me out of the movie every second he was on screen.
Yeah.
Usually, they are pretty reserved with how they choose to implement this technology. So I guess it really just depends on how clever they are, you know?
Yeah. Well, that one's weird because he's dead. I think also, like, they didn't necessarily de-age him. That's so true. Much as they just brought him back to life.
But somebody else played him, right?
But
that's true. But I feel like it looks similar, but maybe the de-aging would look better. But I guess...
Can we spoil Rogue One?
Okay, spoilers for Rogue One. Yes, now you can.
Yeah. Skip ahead about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. But Princess Leia is towards the end of Rogue One. I don't know what process they did with her, but they made a very young-looking Carrie Fisher.
They used a different actress and just made a very young-looking Carrie Fisher. The same thing they did with the Peter Cushing Tarkin character, but I imagine it's a lot easier to get a younger-looking Carrie Fisher face while she was still alive than it would be an actor who's long dead.
Yeah.
Actually,
either way, they both bothered me in Rogue One.
Yeah,
Carrie Carrie Fisher actually bothered me more than Peter Cushing. I don't know why. Maybe Peter Cushing was in the dark more, and where Carrie Fisher was in the light. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the Martin Scorsese film, though.
Yeah, I trust Martin Scorsese to implement it well.
Yeah, and if the rest of the movie is really good, I can, like, it's like special effects. Like I can watch King Kong, the original King Kong. The special effects aren't great, but they're fun. It's still a fun movie,
Right. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to whatever Chris wants to talk about would be the showrunners for Game of Thrones, David Benioff and Dan Wise. They have been tapped by Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy to helm a series of Star Wars films, which are to be separate than the series of Star Wars films that Rian Johnson has already been helmed to make as well. What do you guys think about this development? Does this seem like a natural fit, or does this seem like, ugh?
I like Game of Thrones quite a bit. I think when Game of Thrones is at its best is when they're adapting George R. R. Martin's books, whereas when they've had to go on their own, it hasn't been as good as when they were adapting. So that worries me if they're writing them, from scratch, because I think they're better adapters than they are writers.
It's true, but they could also pull from all that scrapped novels and things like that Disney made not canon anymore when they took over. They have a rich set of novels they could pull from. I don't know if they're any good or not, because they're all stuff I haven't read, and they could easily be written by like hacky writers. But I feel like there's enough stuff they could kind of do like the comic book movies do, and pick and choose elements from stories they like. And I don't know. We'll see. What do you think, Justin?
Well, as you both know, I've never fully gotten on board the Game of Thrones train, so I guess I can't really be impressed or unimpressed, because I don't really know enough of their work. Like, I've seen season 1 of Game of Thrones and didn't watch the rest. So I guess I don't really know what their track record is unless they've done other things that I've seen that I'm not aware of.
Sure. I think the main appeal that I think will translate to the Star Wars franchise pretty well is their sense of scale and epicness, and they're very good at sprinkling in interesting lore in a good way to help build a world. So if they do get quality scripts and quality material, then I feel like they are capable of building a world very well and expanding the Star Wars franchise in an interesting way. But that is a glass half full outlook on the whole thing.
I guess if anything, it sort of makes me a little more concerned that we're getting even more Star Wars movies. Not that it's a surprise that we're going to get more, because I'm sure as long as they're successful.
Call. You're going to have 1 to 2 a year for the rest of your life until they stop making money.
Yeah, probably so. And it's just at some point it's going to feel overwhelming. And if they're getting a trilogy, right? Is that what you said?
Well, series.
Or a series.
A series. So
okay.
I think it's open-ended at this point. It could be anything between 2 or infinity.
Yeah, so I know that like Rian Johnson has a trilogy, and now there's a series coming like that's potentially never ending, maybe another trilogy, something like that. We've got Solo coming up, so it's just like already I know like well that's probably at least like 6 to 7, and like I kind of like just looking forward to like 1, maybe 2 Star Wars movies at a time, and now I know that there's like 6 or 7 coming, and it's already starting to make me feel a little overwhelmed, or like it's just feels like too many.
Well, it's just like a TV show, I think. You take one at a time. You don't have to watch them all at the same time. But I think the best thing about this, it kind of sounds to me like they're scrapping the one-offs, like the Rogue One and the Solo story, and they're going to do more of a series of movies as opposed to one-offs. And I kind of like that idea better than what they've been doing. Like I'm not super excited about the Han Solo movie. I'm interested in watching it, but it's not what gets like I'm not super excited. I want them to move outside of the Luke Skywalker story or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Han Solo. Let's like spread this universe out a little bit, come up with some new stories outside of that area.
Sure, and I would argue that direction depends entirely on the success of Solo.
Yeah.
If you see Solo do financially well, you're going to see an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that's already been rumored. You might see a Samuel L. Jackson Mace Windu movie. So nothing's ruled out at this point. I think it all literally just depends on the fan reception to Solo. But I don't think you have anything to worry about because it seems like the internet has already chosen to hate it. So
the internet hates everything.
That's true.
I will say that I would much rather see them do a new series or like Rian Johnson do a new trilogy that expands the universe, as Chris said, as opposed to another like a
Boba Fett movie,
a prequel Mace Windu or a prequel Obi-Wan Kenobi. I would rather see new territory than just the origin stories or whatever of characters we already know. I want to fall in love with new characters.
Yeah,
I agree. I feel like I would like Ewan McGregor to get to be in one good Star Wars movie before he's done. So I wouldn't be opposed or bringing him back, but I agree pretty much. Like I wasn't asking for this Solo movie, but now that it exists, I'm gonna hope it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's all I have to talk about today. Chris, what did you want to talk about?
So the new series, Star Trek Discovery, just ended yesterday. Have you guys watched Star Trek at all? Like any of the Star Trek series, or a fan of the Trek universe or anything like that?
No, I've only seen the first movie with William Shatner, Wrath of Khan, and then the first two of like the reboot Star Trek. I've never seen any episodes of the TV show.
Not any episodes
of like
of
the
TV
later movies.
Yeah, I've only seen a couple episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Is that what it's called? With Patrick Stewart, and when I was like really little, and it was on TV. And then I've only seen like the J.J. Abrams, like Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto reboot trilogy that exists so far. So to answer your question, no, I am not versed on Star Trek at all.
Yeah. I never watched the original series. I watched The Next Generation like quite a bit. It was kind of one of the first shows I watched a lot. I watched a little Deep Space Nine, but I've been watching the Star Trek Discovery. That was like the one show. Like I was really busy with the play, but I would take time out to watch the show, and it just ended, and it was really good. CBS kind of really screwed it up because the only way to watch it is if you get a subscription to CBS All Access, so that it's hard to watch it. But
it didn't come on TV at all, just the app itself, right?
Right. The first 2 episodes aired on TV back to back, like kind of the opening movie and then that was kind of the hook to get people to subscribe. So people haven't been talking about it much. There's lots of twists. The captain, I should have looked up his name.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it one of those like new types of series where they only do like 10 to 12 episodes, or is it a full like 24 hour?
They didn't do 24.
Not 24 hour, 24 hour long episodes.
They did. I think it was they had like a 9 episodes before Christmas, and then like 4 or 5 after. So about 15 or so. So it's not a big one. It's bigger than like HBO, but and not all of the episodes are super great, but they were really enjoyable. Doug Jones is in it. He plays, of course, some sort of like a creature. Jason Isaacs is in it. He plays the captain. He's really good.
Oh, cool. I like Jason Isaacs.
Yeah, Jason Isaacs and Michelle Yeoh's in it as well. It's just really good, really twisty. I don't know. I wish you guys were more into Star Trek. We could talk about it more. But
let me ask you this. Can I watch it without having seen any other Star Trek series?
This one takes place before any of the other Star Treks, and deals with...
Wait, so it's a prequel to the Shatner and Leonard Nimoy stuff?
Yeah, or kind of... So it would be prequel or alongside, if that makes sense. So like Shatner's doing his thing, and then Discovery's doing their thing together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and each doing separate missions in different parts of space and whatnot.
Right. And there would be characters that you would recognize, like Spock's dad raised the main character in this. So there's connections to it and stuff like that. But it's really good. Yeah, give it an opportunity. Give it a shot. Watch the first episode, see what you guys think.
Yeah, I gladly would, I think.
How much is CBS Now or Access or...
It's too much for just one show.
All right.
I mean, I think it's
what else do I get with it?
It's $9.99. I mean, you get everything else. You get Young Sheldon. You're a Big Bang Theory fan.
Justin is. I'm not.
Yeah,
I want to make that clear.
Yeah. So you get the CBS stuff, but the only reason I subscribed to it was for Star Trek, and that is unfortunate. I don't think I'll do that again next year. I think because it's easier just to cancel it and then wait till it's all out and just have a little bit of patience on it. But all right, Justin, what do you got?
Yeah, so I don't have news necessarily to talk about, but I did today. Earlier, I watched the first of the Maze Runner films. Have either of you guys seen this one?
No.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I guess it kind of, I think, got mixed in with the sort of like young adult science fiction novels that they've turned into movies.
Divergent and what was like the one that was
Hunger
popular?
Games.
Hunger Games. Yeah.
So there's another film podcast that I listen to, and it's called Battleship Retention, and I tend to agree a good majority of the time with like their opinions. And they were talking about having gone seen like the most recent Maze Runner film, which I think is the third in the series that's currently in theaters right now. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how much they love the first one. And I can't remember how much they liked the second one. I actually hear that it's not very good, but they're talking about the first Maze Runner and how good it was. And I was like, well, maybe I'll give it a shot. I watched the Hunger Games, didn't like it, so I kind of skipped over Maze Runner. But I watched it today, and it's really good. Like I was impressed. Like I guess it just surprised me on like a level of like the performances and all the characters and them being interesting and getting like I got attached to some of them and got involved with like the mystery of what's going on. Like essentially, if anyone doesn't know, it's just these group of kids that are dropped into like the center of this giant maze, and they have their memories erased and don't know what's going on, I guess. But then they send people out to go try to navigate the maze and try to find a way out of it and stuff. But they're basically trying to like, they have this little civilization built in the center of this maze where there's like greenery and trees and stuff. They have a little village, like a system of, I don't want to say government, but like power, basically. Like there's a leader who like calls the shots. But they've basically built their own little community, and a lot of them have been there for like 2-3 years. And like, there's at certain points, there's like a bit of a struggle of like, we actually think we might have found a way out of the maze, but like some of them are too scared to go outside of the maze, right? And they want to like stay there in like the civilization and like not move on. There's just a lot of like interesting things that I didn't expect. Like, have you guys seen like Hunger Games?
Yeah, I've seen the first two.
Couple.
I think Hunger Games is just like very simple. It's like just like there's a good guy and a bad guy, and like everybody in the group is just trying to like win the game. I think there might be one that like plays the game a little more seriously, and like some other ones want to work together. But like, I just this one just like went a little bit deeper, had a little bit better performances that actually got me interested, and then the story itself was just, as things unfolded, I found myself actually interested in like what's going to happen next, what's going on, and I liked it.
Cool. It looks like the same director directed all three of them, Wes Ball. So maybe you will like the next two as well.
I don't know. I know that I'm going to go out of my way to find them and watch them.
Yeah, I actually listened to the Empire podcast, and they just recently reviewed one of the actors for the third one that's coming out. And they talked to him about splitting the third movie up into two movies, and how like the director was like, no, he turned down money just to make one movie.
He's like, I don't want to dedicate another 2 years to this franchise. It's time to move on.
But I think that's pretty cool as opposed to like a money grab,
Oh, like, definitely.
Let's just make it two movies,
Yeah, and I think in general the movie just seems to be doing things just enough differently and enough like trying to be a better movie than some of those other films that seem like, they're made just because they're popular and they don't really put like the thought into them to make them really great, in my opinion.
If it's any consolation to you, I know the third one apparently just came out in theaters, but it has a 0.1 higher rating on IMDb than the first one. Yep.
Really? I've heard that get increasingly worse.
It might get worse and then get 0.1 better,
The Empire review said the second one was worse, and then the third one is a return to being as good as the first one.
Oh, cool. Well, I guess I have to struggle through the second one. Maybe I need to do it soon so I could go see it in theaters because that would be pretty fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like ultimately, I recommend if you want like a good sort of like popcorn movie to watch with like a girl or your girlfriend, you know, when they don't want to watch something like artsy, you don't want to like throw a Criterion movie at them, like. Or whatever, like I recommend The Maze Runner. It's fun, interesting, sort of like popcorn movie that's just like better than the average like dystopian young adult sci-fi.
I'm glad you watched it. Now I know if it comes across my Netflix screen to give it a try.
Yeah, don't dismiss it immediately, which is what I might have done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so last bit of stuff that we wanted to talk about. We wanted to do an Oscar bet. Basically. And Chris, do you want to explain the Oscar bet and what it is that we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Oscar bet is going to be pretty fun, I think. Justin, Mike, and I are all going to make our picks for the Oscars, and it's on every single category. We'll pick one for every category, even the ones that nobody cares about that are in the show. And then whoever wins gets to pick a movie for the rest of us to review, and we'll dedicate an off-week episode to it. But the exciting part is that we're going to extend you guys. You guys can vote as well. Send them in through Facebook or email us or Twitter, Instagram, however you want to get in contact with us. But make your votes, and if you guys win, you get to pick a movie for us as well. So I guess what you would do is write down your picks. And also write down the movie that you'd want us to review.
I think just whoever wins will contact you through whatever means is you contact us through email us. We'll email you back, let you know you won. If you tweet us, if you DM us on Twitter, message us on Facebook, however it is, you can even post it in like the Facebook group or on the Facebook page publicly if you want to do that. And whoever wins will contact you. You know, whatever movie you want us to watch, you can make us review Troll 2, the documentary about Troll 2, whatever that was called, best worst movie.
Yeah, we'll do anything. Peter Rabbit, whatever you want us to review. So
actually, I hear Peter Rabbit's not bad.
Yeah, I think maybe within a little bit of reason, if you ask us to watch like an adult movie, we probably won't review that and talk about that. I think there are minor parameters, but you have to get pretty out there. But generally, if it's like a regular, if it's a movie,
we'll do Caligula, but not the other ones.
Yeah, not Debbie Does Dallas.
Yeah. How good are you guys? Have you guys ever picked Oscar? Have you guys ever done Oscar picks before?
I think I've done it like twice.
Yeah, just like with my friends, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Writing them down, and I probably didn't choose any like the best short film or anything like that categories, because usually I'm not too up on those.
We did it once, like, what was it? The 2008 Oscars that were covering 2007 when we lived in the trailer. And Mike?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was because that was one of the year we had seen all of the best pictures, so we got like hyped on it, and we did it. And I think I remember getting like 2 right.
Out of all of them?
Yeah. I did pretty badly, so I don't really hold out much hope for myself in this contest.
I actually have a friend like from high school, and we don't talk a lot, but every year before the Oscars, he calls me, and we get all the picks. And I think he's only beat me once or twice, so I think I'm pretty good. So I'm the guy to beat, I guess.
All right, well, tell him now if he beats you this year,
he gets to pick a movie.
Yeah, he gets
send
to
it in.
Make you watch whatever he wants.
Exactly.
But only if he officially sends it in. And you got to send it in before the Oscars, obviously.
Yeah, obviously that would be cheating otherwise.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited about that. And also, I guess we should say, if we win, we get to pick a movie for the other two. So I don't know if I said that or not.
And I think I think we should post our lists onto Facebook too.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that.
Like that way, our lists are public. That way, people will believe us. Yeah. So we got to get ours in too.
So the gauntlet's thrown, or whatever the term is. All right. So are you guys ready to discuss Phantom Thread?
No.
Yeah, Phantom Thread. I didn't watch that.
Yeah, I forgot to watch it.
Damn it.
Just kidding. Yes, let's do it.
It's not because the fabric is adored by the clients that Cyril is right. It's right because it's right. Because it's beautiful. Maybe one day you'll change your taste, Alma.
Maybe not.
Maybe you have no taste.
Maybe I like my own taste.
Yes, just enough to get you into trouble.
Perhaps I'm looking for trouble.
Stop!
So, Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, not the Phantom Thread as I hear it referred to sometimes, which I don't know, just briefly, like, is a pet peeve of mine sometimes when people throw a "the" in front of things that don't need it.
Guys, I watched The Phantom Menace.
Or like, it's not technically the Eagles, it's just Eagles.
Like the football team?
No, the band. I care not about the football team.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh,
I
I
would
did
never
actually.
bring that up.
I did not know that. But now that you mention it, I've seen it just say Eagles.
Yep, it's annoyingly named. I hate it. I always want to put the in front of it because it's weird just to be like, have you ever heard of Eagles? Or do you like Eagles?
Yeah. It does sound weird. And yeah, people do it all the time with the soccer league here in America, which is like MLS, which stands for Major League Soccer. Uh-huh. And if you say, people say the MLS, and then you say the Major League Soccer, which just sounds goofy and stupid.
Yeah, it makes you sound like a moron.
Yeah. So anyways, Phantom Thread. I guess generally we're going to start off and do a spoiler-free section, and then we'll give you a warning before we go into the section where we talk about spoilers. So first up, non-spoilers. Just generally, what did you think, Chris?
I really enjoyed it. I guess I would say I would like to see it again. I wanted to see it a second time before the podcast, but I didn't have an opportunity to. And a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's films always benefit from a second viewing, but I really enjoyed watching it. The cinematography was amazing. The music was really great, I thought. Daniel Day-Lewis, of course, knocked it out of the park. And a surprise, like all the actors in this were really, really good. Woodcock's sister, and then the love interest. I think the love interest was right there with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Vicky Creeps.
Vicky Creeps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Creeps.
Creeps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought she was just as good as Daniel Day-Lewis. And
definitely. She held her own.
She's nominated too, right? And
I don't think so.
But I thought she was.
The sister is nominated.
Oh,
for best supporting, but the love interest is not. What's her name? Alma?
Alma, yes, the love interest.
Yeah, I think she deserves to be nominated. The sister is really good too. I guess in the supporting actress category. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I want to see it again and get more out of it. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I'm right there with Chris, except I did manage to see it a second time. And a funny thing happened. The first time I watched it, I left pretty much the exact same way as Chris. I was thinking about the music by Johnny Greenwood. His ongoing collaboration with Paul Thomas Anderson seems to be going great. I think this is probably my favorite score of his.
Wait, did he do the master too?
He did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he... I think he only works... Oh, actually, that's not true. I think he did a score for another couple movies recently. But... yeah, I believe Paul Thomas Anderson actually served as his own DP on this movie. I know you mentioned the cinematography earlier.
Yeah, uncredited,
that is
right?
true.
Yeah, and I think it looks really pretty.
Yeah, it's uncredited though, right? He like
yeah, I don't think he
kind
really
of under weird
talks
circumstances.
about it too much.
Yeah, wonder what happened.
But one thing I will add to what you said, I will agree that Daniel Day-Lewis is great. The actress who plays Alma is great. Leslie Manville, who plays Cyril, the sister, is great, who is also nominated for an Academy Award. But one thing that I will add is that the second time I saw it, it was a lot funnier to me. I didn't realize what kind of movie I was getting into the first time I went into it, and I think that's probably my fault. I saw Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson, and I thought, oh, man, this guy's going to be, like, intense. I was thinking Daniel Plainview Part 2, or I thought he was going to be abusive and mean. There is an element of that, but I think it subverts a lot of expectations in a really smart an interesting way, and it's a lot sweeter than I thought it would be, while also being kind of like a gothic romance. Yeah. So, what about you, Justin? What do you think?
Well, I only saw it one time. I didn't get a chance to watch it again because I actually just watched it yesterday, the day before we recorded. And I think something interesting kind of happened just real quick before I get into it is I think the projector in my theater was like soft focus, or was this movie just generally kind of a soft focus film?
I don't think so.
Because I've looked at like still images for, like online after, and like the still images that I've seen are like very sharp, and like everything, like I thought it kind of looked like McCabe and Mrs. Miller, you know, like sort of like very, very soft focus.
That's an ugly movie
thing. And so I think that unfortunately the cinematography was a little lost on me. Like I thought it looked good and was intentionally soft focused, but it was a little bothersome at times. It was a little like distracting, I guess, and it didn't like strike me in any way. And I guess maybe the projector was just sort of soft focus. I didn't question it until I looked at still images from Google and found them to be like very soft, right? Or very sharp. The images on Google were very sharp, but like the image I remember being very, very soft. And I guess I thought it was intentional. I thought it was going for like that old timey look. There's so much like ambient light coming through the windows, lighting everything. And, but you know, that's just something I'm not totally sure. Like it's one reason I need to watch it again. Like one of, I think several reasons. I did really enjoy the movie. I guess I kind of had a heads up on what kind of movie I was in for from, you know, talking to you about it after you had seen it. You, Mike, and Chris and I didn't really talk about it, but Mike, you kind of gave me a heads up.
Yeah.
And I had also seen
Blood Part 2.
Yeah. And I'd also seen other comments on it that kind of warned me. And I think the shining star of the movie for me on the first viewing is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like, I think the soundtrack is really, really good. Like, it just kind of lulled me through the movie and, like, carried me through it. Like, where I was never bored. It was very relaxing. Like, I actually got a little sleepy at certain points because I went right after breakfast, which, you know, sometimes I want to nap after breakfast.
Oh, man. And there are some great shots of breakfast in this movie.
There are, yeah. And
he does love his breakfast.
Yeah. And, of course, the performances are really good. I think what I would really get out of a second time is paying more attention to the performances, because I think there's a lot going on under the surface. Like under there's a surface level thing or surface level stuff going on with like each character. But I think there's really, really nuanced performances that I don't think I can understand on one viewing at all. And then hopefully maybe it would be funnier, because that's what I keep hearing is from not just from you, Mike, but from other people, that on second viewing, it's a lot funnier. And I think you had also told me that Paul Thomas Anderson said, I think I made like a romantic comedy here, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much how he likes to think of it. But he also acknowledges that people going in expecting When Harry Met Sally will leave gravely disappointed.
Yeah. And so maybe I went a little bit, like the pendulum swung a little too far the other way of expecting something like that. And I think because it's not a typical romantic comedy, it's very sort of abnormal in similar ways to like Punch Drunk Love, how that's kind of a very offbeat romantic comedy. And I think knowing exactly what the tone of the movie is will serve the movie better the next time, because I can kind of pay attention. I found that
to be the case. Yeah, absolutely.
But I certainly think, on the whole, I would I like it more than his most recent movies. It's my favorite movie since There Will Be Blood. Like, because I'll just go ahead and say I'm not too big on his last two films, like Inherent Vice or The Master. I haven't really had a desire to watch either of those again, but like almost immediately after walking out of the theater for Phantom Thread, I was like, yep, I want to watch that one again, and I know I will.
I got to disagree with you on The Master, man. I really dig that one quite a bit. I find this one to be very similar in tone. I don't know if that's just me, but they both feel like love stories to me in their own way. But
Yeah, I think that you were talking about the nuance. You need to go back and watch The Master, I think. I mean, not like you need to go back because you didn't understand it the first time, but I think the nuances with Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams, like kind of what you were talking about there, what you see in The Phantom Thread is also there in The Master.
I agree.
Yeah. I think it's been about 5 years since The Master, so I do have, and especially after watching this, I do have like that bit that's like, yeah, go back and watch The Master, but
just to try it, see what, like dip your toe in, see how you feel about it,
and also it's a perfect time to revisit some old Philip Seymour Hoffman performances that might be a little bittersweet too.
Yeah. That makes sense.
There was one scene that I wanted. Well, we were talking about the music. Just real quick before we go into spoilers, I guess. But it was a New Year's Eve party, and like there was like almost 2 soundtracks during that the New Year's Eve party. Like the piano's playing, and like I guess they have the background music. And it was really interesting the way they kind of interwove that in there, that music with the background noise, and I thought the editing of that music in that was really good.
Yeah, I think there's some moments like that in the film, and that's one in particular where I really got like that the Punch Drunk Love vibe of like, I remember in Punch Drunk Love there's these times when like the music just gets so overwhelmingly like
wacky.
Like chaotic. Yes, that's the right word. And wacky. Yeah, it's like that. It's just like it makes you so like on edge and uncomfortable to just like hear. And so there was like that was one moment where it really felt like Punch Drunk Love to me.
Cool. All right, are we ready for spoilers, guys?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so spoiler alert. Don't listen anymore if you don't want to, if you haven't seen the movie yet. So yeah, who wants to start us off?
I will. I have actually been thinking about this pretty much since I saw it the first time, and I enjoyed it so much more the second time, which is the relationship between Leslie Manville's character Cyril and Vicky Creeps' Alma. I really enjoyed that relationship because Cyril, she's so cold and distant the whole movie, right? Like, you get the impression that like she doesn't like anything, she doesn't get any joy out of life, right? And I like how there's like certain times in the movie where she does portray emotions, and when she does, it's always unexpected but kind of dry. Like there's an instance where Woodcock is sitting at the breakfast table and Alma is not there, but Cyril is like essentially, hey, I like her, quit treating her badly, and I just thought that was so funny that like the only way we would even know she likes anything is if she just comes out and says it in like a really flat, blunt way, which is just like, I like her. And then watching that the second time, knowing that the whole time she does like her, like, you think that she's putting it at odds or trying to shoot down her plans to impress Woodcock, but really, watching it the second time, you get the idea that Cyril is literally giving her the best advice she knows how to give, right? Which is like, he is not going to like you throwing off his routine. He is not going to like this. And she's the only woman that's able to learn how to live with Woodcock, and the one that he's not going to kick to the curb eventually. And I just thought that relationship was just really funny.
Yeah, I think the whole dynamic between the three of them, they'd like make alliances with each other, and then it would change. And second viewing would benefit that. But like that whole the power dynamic between the three of them was really interesting.
There's also that scene where Woodcock is in a particularly bad mood, and he says something to Cyril like, "Oh, be quiet," or "Why don't you just do this," or something like that. And she says in like the calmest way possible, she's like, "Look, don't mess with me, man. I will go straight through you, and you will end up on the ground."
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
And you just see like he acknowledges it. Nothing is said after that, but like he looks at her and he's like, "You're absolutely right," And it's like, I just love how she can just put him in his place, and she doesn't have to resort to the measures that Alma does to do so.
Yeah, I think their relationship is really interesting, and like in some ways, I found it a little more interesting than the Alma's. Alma and his relationship, like, and I guess like she's working with him, and in some ways she's putting up with his routines, right? Like his weird stuff. Like she doesn't seem to want to like fight him on any of this stuff of like, you have to be super quiet during breakfast, right?
Yeah,
And she's kind of putting up with these routines, and it almost, at first I got the vibe that like she's, pampering him, in a way, and like nurturing this. Yeah. And to a bad extent, like you said, and then, but like nurturing him because he's this like great artist and dress designer, and she has to nurture him to like, so that she doesn't ruin what he's got, because it's obviously providing for all of them.
Right. He's a tortured genius, eccentric type, right?
Yeah.
That trope. But
then you have the, like that scene, like you said, where she's just like, basically tells him off when he starts to like get grumpy.
Yeah. She doesn't care if he's grumpy with anyone else.
So you think that he's just kind of walking all over everybody, but then you have this hint that like, oh, well, maybe she's actually, she's in charge to an extent here.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of similar. I'll be vague about it, but that's kind of similar to The Master in a certain sense as well.
It is. Characters. I thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must be something that P.T. Anderson is very drawn to, is maybe the idea of a secret lady matriarchal figure secretly pulling the strings of the operation, whatever the operation of his protagonist is,
So I do want to jump off that a little bit of his and the sister's relationship, and I guess kind of the relationship between all three, but like Daniel Day-Lewis's character, I know his last name's Woodcock. Like, what is his first name again?
Reynolds
is like, he has this routine, right? He's got this like routine about concentrating and like being really focused on one thing. And when like there are distractions and this routine and this stuff that he likes breaks or differs, like it ruins the whole day. I think the sister says that at one point, right? She's like, it can ruin the whole day.
Yeah.
It can
he
throw him
cannot
off.
begin his day with a confrontation. He just simply cannot.
Yeah. And so this is something that my girlfriend Nicole pointed out, because she is a teacher and she works with kids. She teaches middle school theater, and she thought that there were hints of autism about his character in that sense, which is something I didn't even think about. But she has a few autistic kids that she works with, right? And she said that's exactly how they are. They have to have like this routine. They can be super focused on like something, and if something breaks it, like it can just mess up their entire day,
Sure.
And
so maybe he's somewhere on the scale.
Yeah, which is something I didn't even think about. I don't know if that's intended to be there and intentional, but it's another one of those things that I think I will really pay attention to, like on another viewing.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's
on
really
a
cool.
kind of a split off from Phantom Thread, I saw an article that when Christopher Nolan was interviewed, and Christopher Nolan had taken his family to go see the Phantom Thread. And now his kids call him Woodcock. They're like, "Do you need your attention? Like basically, you need your breakfast. You make sure you're focused on your thing." So I wonder if it's not Paul Thomas Anderson even reflecting on himself or on that artist. I think I would imagine Christopher Nolan and P.T. Anderson getting really obsessed and really into this thing, and not being able to be distracted, or being upset by distraction. So I don't know. I thought that was really funny, though.
Yeah, I think that it certainly feels like there's probably some sort of like autobiographical element in regards to that part of the story.
Yeah, I also think we see that type of thing in his other characters throughout his films.
I listened to an interview with P.T. Anderson, and he talked about how the inspiration for this movie came from when he was really sick, and his wife or his longtime girlfriend, Maya Rudolph, was taking care of him. And he said that she was looking at him in a way that she hadn't looked at him in years since they had kids, And then he called Daniel Day-Lewis and said that he had an idea for a movie. So from what I understand, that is kind of how the inspiration for this movie began.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess that's a good segue into the end of the movie and the poisoning that takes place.
Do you want to talk about the end already?
It kind of got brought up. We can keep going on other stuff. I was just going to talk about, so what do we think? She's poisoning him. She poisons him twice that we know of. And the second time, he knows that he's about to be poisoned.
Sure.
Right?
I wonder when he started finding out about it. But it seems like, every time she starts losing power over him, or he starts to get a little too high and mighty, or basically gets to be too much of an asshole, she asserts herself and kind of makes herself needed in a maternal way, which clearly he has hang-ups for,
Yeah, that he didn't mind it either. He didn't mind being sick because of or being dependent on her. I mean, what do you guys think about that? That's kind of a really interesting dynamic. What point did he know that she was poisoning him?
I mean, I don't think he knows the first time.
No.
I think that's pretty clear. I think in the second time, he's just reading while she's cooking, and then all of a sudden he stops reading and just starts staring at her while she's preparing. And I think he sees her looking at this book. I don't know if we're supposed to assume that he knows what book that is and what that has to do with this book that talks about poison mushrooms or the difference between mushrooms, so you don't eat poisonous ones. It seems like he figures it out there, and so the entire time he's getting ready to eat, he's playing this game. And I thought that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is him getting ready to eat this meal that he knows is poisoned. And I'm not sure that she knows that he knows. I think at a certain point she does. Yeah. But it's this very silent, for the most part, really milking every second of suspense and tension out of this moment of character, and they're just kind of looking at each other.
Yeah,
and it's a bit of a showdown.
Mouth. Yeah, he holds it there for a long time just to pause and let the suspense build. Right, he takes the bite or he cuts a piece off with a fork, and then he's just holding it there and just letting it linger.
I think he's giving her every chance to let him come out and let him know that this is what I'm doing.
So you read it as he supposedly didn't know, but he did know, and he was giving her a chance to fess up. That's how you kind of read it?
Yes, but not in the sense that he's going to let her. I think he is impressed, and the reason that the end happens the way that it does is because she doesn't, right? I think that he's interested in that part of her that is going to poison him and not so she can take care of him. And I think he's looking for that weakness of the point where she actually says, wait, don't, I can't do this. I can't go through that. I think that would make him less interested. And maybe I'm way off base, but that's kind of the vibe that I got, with the way that it ends, that he goes through with it.
I got a romantic vibe from that scene. You know how you're cooking dinner for your girlfriend, and you know what's going to happen later on that night, right? And you're going to consummate the relationship or whatever, and they're both kind of they're both.
You mean sex, Chris? Or is that what you're talking about?
Wait, he means whoopee.
Yeah, making whoopee later on. Yeah, I guess we can say that on this podcast.
You can say whoopee.
Whoopee, okay,
but not sex.
But they're kind of looking I don't know. It was almost she was excited about it, and he was excited about it, and they weren't really talking exactly. And she didn't seem surprised when he reveals that he knows. So it was almost this this weird, what would you call it? Foreplay. This weird foreplay before, the event. What'd you think, Mike?
I didn't read it that way the first time. The second time I was watching it, it did occur to me that maybe he was aware after the New Year's Eve dance. He goes, which, by the way, I like the shot whenever she leaves to go dancing, and he's like, I don't want to go, whatever, and then she's like, well, I'm going now. And he's like, fine. And then she leaves, but then you see him there's a shot through a door frame, And you see him like lean into the door frame to like spy on her, like, oh man, is she really going? You know?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I think Daniel Day-Lewis sells that moment really well.
Yeah, that was a really good shot too.
But I think after he goes and gets her, and like, so it's like they're each feeling each other out. They're each pushing and pulling, and they each require different things in the relationship, right? So she talks to the doctor, and she's like, well, I want to go have fun, you know, because he invites her to the dance. And she's like, well, let's go dancing. And he's like, no. And she knows he's going to say no. But this is where she's going to die on this hill, right? She's going to go anyway and make him go through like a grand gesture. So he does, and he goes and gets her. And then the next scene is he gets fed up with her and goes to Cyril, and he's like, get her out of here. She's annoying. I hate her. Like, she's disrupting everything or whatever. And she comes in behind him to hear that. But I think he is aware that she is hearing that, right?
He doesn't seem surprised.
No. I think that is his way of pushing it into the next phase of their relationship where she has to push back. I think that is him activating her to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to let him kick me to the curb. Fuck him. I'm going to make him need me, you know? And I think that's what he's doing there. I think when he's talking to Cyril, he has no intention of Cyril kicking her to the curb. I think he wants Alma to stand up for herself and push back, because I think secretly that's what he's always wanted, right? He accepts Cyril because she can push back when needed. He doesn't kick Alma to the curb because she knows how to push back in the right ways.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying. I think, like, with the scene where he's like really taking a long time to like eat the poisoned mushroom omelet, is that he's giving her this opportunity to not do it, right? And if she doesn't, then she doesn't have what he needs, because he needs her to do it, right? Like, he needs her to like prove that she's not weak and not weak enough to like give in. He sees that like she's strong, she's going to stick to it, and has like no issue, like no matter how long he waits and like how much suspense and like tries to let her build guilt, she's going to do it. And I think that is like what seals the deal for him.
Interesting. So do you think that assuming that's only the second time she's poisoned him, right? Assuming that we're not condensing time and that there's been months where he's been poisoned a couple times, do you think that he caught on after the first time and was kind of or had suspicions, and then so the end of the movie is him trying to bring that out in her and just trying to see if he was right? Or I don't know if it mattered. Like, I see what you're saying, but I also think that the last scene, like, if he does know while she's cooking it, he's watching, and she's like, oh, come into the kitchen, you can see how I do it, and then you can eat it, and then I'll take care of you the rest of the night until into the next day. Either way, I think it amounts to the same thing, which is that by the end of it, he is aware, no matter when he finds out, and it's what he's attracted to, it seems like, and it seems like he wants to bring it upon himself because she likes to be maternal, and he wants her to be maternal.
Yeah, I think what's going on for me throughout like the whole movie is this struggle for balance between the two, right? Like, she comes in, he brings her to the house, and at first she's learning all of his rules, and at first she's kind of like subservient to all of them, right? Like, you know, the first breakfast, she's very noisy, which I think the sound work in there is really great.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They just like make every sound so like brutally loud.
Yeah,
The one after they're married.
Yeah, and then I'm talking about her first breakfast scene and the one after they're married. They do it again, but in between we see the breakfast scenes, and she's very, very quiet and being intentionally quiet. So like basically at first she's giving in to him, giving him everything, which is making her unhappy, I think, ultimately. And I think maybe she realizes that she's just kind of becoming another girl, right? Or just another I don't know if like a muse, because there's a bit of like a muse sense to her, which we can talk about a little bit later. But eventually she poisons him the first time, and that shifts the balance because she's stayed with him, and then all of a sudden like that makes him want to give in and marry her. And once he's married her, which he already told her, I'll never get married basically. That shifts the power back to her, because then, as Chris said, like that next time they're eating after they get married, she's eating loud again, not even worried about it, and he's got to deal with it. And he also has to deal with a lot of other things for her until he gets fed up again, which is when he goes to the sister. It's like then the power went way too much the other way.
Well, it's just a cycle. Is that what this movie is? Is that like a cycle? So just like any relationship, you just kind of go through these cyclical nature of a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's what most of the movie is. And I guess my question to you guys: do you think that the end is them finding a balance? That like, because essentially she says, I want you to be helpless. I want you to lie there. And then I want you to be strong again. And he eats the mushrooms. He smiles. It seems like they're just A-okay with that system. And that's the system is like, okay, I want you to be strong and do your thing. But at a certain point, I'm going to get you helpless again so that I can get what I need. And then you can go back to being strong again.
Right. Well, I think that starts because I don't think that would be possible if she hadn't first like ingratiated herself into his business. Like she made herself more than just like the next girl. What was it that when he goes to that, like they're at like a wedding or something? Yeah, like a wedding with that old lady who's like wearing the dress and she's getting drunk and acting stupid.
Yeah, she passes out.
Yeah, and like you could tell it's like grinding on him. So she takes this as opportunity to like build him up a little bit and be like,
she doesn't deserve that dress.
Yeah, she doesn't deserve that dress. And then when she talks to the caretaker for that lady at the hotel room, and Daniel Day-Lewis's character Woodcock is like, "Give me the dress" or whatever, and then she says something like, instead of like, "She can't behave this way," dressed in his dresses like that. Like she's like, from the house of Woodcock, she cannot behave this way if she's wearing a dress from the house of Woodcock. And it's almost like she's insinuating herself into his business and his livelihood by like telling him to go get that dress back and marching in there and taking it off that woman because he can't do it, lest he be inappropriate.
Yeah, and isn't that the first time he takes her to his room at night? Right after that?
Yeah, like right after that, like he kisses her in the street. It's like the most romantic part of the whole movie, like in the classic sense, right? That's when he is like head over heels for her. So I think that's the moment when she becomes not another muse to be discarded when he's bored. That's whenever she becomes a little bit more. And then when I think she realizes she needs to be more than that is when she starts taking measures with the mushrooms.
Yeah, I think that's that spark that I think shows him that she's a strong person and isn't going to put up with crap, like. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when like that attraction really starts. And yeah, I think you're right. You're absolutely right.
And I like how Alma's also not afraid to push back on Cyril a bit. There's a couple moments in the movie whenever Cyril is trying to do what she believes is best, and Alma just straight up ignores that advice and like shuts the door in her face. And I like how it doesn't lead to like a greater war or anything like that. Like it just makes Cyril like her. Yeah. It's like when you push back against this dynamic that these two siblings have had all these years, they react in ways that you don't expect them to. They're just like, oh, okay.
Right. The first time that Daniel Day-Lewis's character is sick and the doctor comes to visit, and he's leaving, and he's like, "Thank you very much, Mrs. Woodcock," or whatever, and they both say, "You're welcome." And they're
right.
both kind of right there. It's a pretty funny scene.
Yeah, I love that he's like, tells the doctor to fuck off, and doesn't she say it? She's like, "I believe he told you to fuck off."
Yeah, I love it later on in the movie whenever they're at the party, and he's like, "Oh, I'm glad to see you're better, Mr. Woodcock," and he's like, "Oh yes, it's nice to see you not through like a pool of sweat. Didn't I tell you to fuck off?"
Yeah. Oh, that was.
And
that
like
was
the doctor's
great.
like, "Yeah, you did."
Because the doctor tells him, he asks him, he's like, "So how are you feeling?" Which is like, he didn't want the doctor to examine him at all.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of half like sounding like an apology of like, or like remembering the moment. It's like, "Oh, didn't I tell you to fuck off?" At least almost like he's going to say sorry about that afterwards,
Yeah,
but he doesn't.
But then doesn't.
So it's
Implying,
essentially
like,
him just telling,
"Have you
like,
forgotten?"
Yeah, didn't I tell you to fuck off? Why are you asking me how I am? It's like
Yeah.
this like double meaning thing that was really funny.
Yeah. Daniel Day-Lewis delivers that line perfectly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it could have been better because I laughed both times I saw it at that part because like the doctor's face is just so like, oh, I don't know how to take this, but yeah, you did.
Yeah. Chris, do you have any talking points that?
I'm still not. What did you think about so we talked about it a little bit, but I wasn't clear on. What did you think of the poisoning scene, the last one, Mike? Did she know that he knew, or like what was your take on that? Especially having seen it twice.
I didn't read it that way, the way Justin's saying it, but like I was saying earlier, I don't know that it matters because either way, it amounts to the same thing. Mm-hmm. Either he caught on after the first poison, or there may have been more poisons in between these. He caught on eventually, or and they had a discussion about it, and he was like, I don't know. I'm actually, you know what? I take that back. I'm pretty sure they've never had a conversation about it.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he knew, and she might be sneakingly aware that he knew. That's why she brought him into the kitchen to watch him make it. Because like I said earlier, I definitely believe that he knew it was going to happen, which is why he went to Cyril and was like, get her out of here. Because I think he knew very well what Alma was going to do next. I just don't know that Alma knew that he knew. And I see what Justin's saying, and it totally makes sense. But I'm going to kind of cop out and say that I don't know that it matters because either way we get to the same place.
I don't think she cares whether he knows or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's letting him be in the kitchen within eye shot of her doing it.
Right.
Like I think she absolutely doesn't care. If he figures out it's okay, she knows what she's going to say. Like what she said felt very predetermined to me. Like, I want you lying there. I want you helpless. And then we be strong again. Like I think that line, I'm probably misquoting it a little bit, but like that line felt predetermined to me. Like I think she just didn't care at all. Like I think she might have been, maybe if he didn't find out, she was going to say it to him while he was sick or something and let him know. Like I think it was fully her intention to like, this is my plan. This is what I want. This is what I need to be here, to stay, to be in this relationship. That's what I need.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I think he's willing to give that to her, which is saying something for the guy who the first time they met says, oh, you have no breasts. That's okay. I can give them to you, like, if I choose to, like it's my job to give them to you if I choose to. So
we certainly get a change in character from both of them, I think, because like, even if you think like the first time they met, she's a waiter or a waitress, which is really obviously she's serving. Like that's not a too deep of a metaphor.
Yeah, and like an immigrant from another country, clearly.
Yeah, and
probably
he's like
displaced from World War II or something.
Yeah, and he's just confidently dominating that food order flirtation, right? Like he like takes her little pad and it's like takes the order and he's like, "You gonna remember this? Because I'm gonna keep it. Yeah. I'm gonna keep your order ticket or whatever."
Yeah, that's test number one, right?
Yeah, for sure. And but yeah, it's just like the dynamic. They've both clearly changed so much, like by the end of the movie. So you can't say that nothing happened, I guess, or nothing happened with the characters.
Yeah. So, do you guys think that this could be qualified as a romantic comedy?
In some sense, like almost like in a different movie that is like a more textbook romantic comedy, like the scene where the girl's like, I don't know what to do with him. He won't pay attention to me. And like one of her girlfriends or somebody might be like, I know what you do. You poison him. Then he has to stay in bed. And it's this whole goofy scene where like, I mean, it's not that funny, I guess, poisoning somebody, but like maybe a different version of that where she like disconnect his car battery so he can't go out anywhere and has to stay at home with you all the time or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of, there's those elements that are almost like, I mean, they're almost just goofy ideas that like sort of nonsensical in like a comedy sense, right?
Well, it's absurd. I think this is close to Punch Drunk Love. Like Punch Drunk Love, I think is a comedy, but it's an absurdist comedy. It's right? Does that make sense to you guys?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
And I think in that way it does. Like walking into this movie, having just seen the trailer, you don't know that that's what this movie is going to be. And, so that's why a second viewing, or even if you do know that it's a absurdist romantic comedy type thing, I think a second viewing just between, some of it's really intense, the between the three of them, but it's ultimately funny, I think, or absurd is what it is.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike? Do you think romantic comedy, does it fit?
You could never sell it as such, right? No. But I think it fits more than anything else I could try to place it as, right? I guess you could call it like a romantic drama, which I guess would be accurate. But I think, like the same way I found There Will Be Blood hilarious after a few times, I found this movie to be hilarious as well. And I refuse to believe that all that is not intentional to some degree, right? So I think it's a romantic comedy, but in the loosest sense, and also like the purest sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I do have a question for you guys about like the Daniel Day-Lewis at the end going along with the poisoning. Do you think that there's any bit of that comes from him being almost overwhelmed by his work and his workload, in the sense that like he in some ways like welcomes the break from doing it and from the pressure, and the reason that I would ask that question, I guess, is the scene where I think it might be right when he goes in to tell the sister that he wants to get rid of Alma. He comes in and I think he's talking about like the Belgian princess or royalty woman who came earlier that he made a wedding dress for. Mm-hmm. They're talking about her, and he's like, she's gone to somebody else, hasn't she? Or something like that. Or did she go to someone else? And he finds out that like after like years and years of making all of her dresses, everything up to her wedding dress, she decided to go to somebody else. And he says like, that hurt my feelings. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem like he's faced a lot of that because he's super successful. And do you think either like being overwhelmed by the amount of work that he's doing, or like him getting rejected and have his feelings hurt, have anything to do with like him being okay with this whole like poisoning bit? And there are these times where like he can't work because he's too sick.
Well, I kind of briefly touched on that earlier. I was saying like I don't think it would have been possible had she not first insinuated herself into the business. Near the end of the movie, after he's poisoned the second time, and she's talking to the doctor, there's like a montage clip with like her voiceover going on. Like there's like shots of like them at the dance, and there's like shots of her nursing him, but there's also shots of her instructing the sewing ladies and looking at the dress mannequin and like making important choices for the dress, right? So I think the reason he allows this to happen is because he does trust her with his life and also his livelihood and his business. And I don't think that he's ever had that before with anyone, which is why I think she's special. Is because she made herself so important, and then he realized that, okay, she's got taste and class, and I can like rely on her for like the business end. But then whenever he gets poisoned, he also knows that, he doesn't have to make any key decisions. He can just chill in his bed and things will get taken care of.
Well, they're partners in a way,
right?
Essentially.
So in that sense, I guess he's giving up more control than most people would, even if they didn't start out as control addicts.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying though, Justin. Like when you're a kid, you're like, oh man, if only I were just a little bit sick and I could stay home today so I didn't have to take the test. So there might be a little bit of that in there. But I also think, maybe a little bit of both of those things where, he wouldn't do that if he didn't feel like he had a partner to take care of his stuff. I mean, he also has a sister that will help as well. But
she doesn't seem to be helping in like a creative sense, like where she would help with the dresses.
She just manages people,
business
for him.
And I guess last thing that I want to talk about, Alma, there's kind of a big deal made at first when Alma shows up. He puts the dresses on her and talks about how she has like the perfect figure and all of this stuff. And I'm wondering how much of that was BS from Daniel Day-Lewis. And because there's this one scene when the Belgian royalty lady is there trying on her dress or talking to him about something. Alma goes and stands up, and we get a shot of both of them in profile, and they look very different. And like the royal princess has like nice posture, and like she's like very like, kind of like Audrey Hepburn and Roman Holiday looking. Mm-hmm. And Alma she's got a little bit of bad posture. You kind of notice all of those things because there's that scene where she's talking about how he makes her feel great, and like she's talking about, I used to think my shoulders were too hunched and my neck was too long, and all of this stuff. Like you kind of see all those things really pointed out in that one shot, that like here's, almost like, I guess like perfection, and here's Alma, right?
I think Alma's perfect to him because I think she reminds him of his mama.
Okay, so you think that's genuine?
Yeah, I think that in his eyes, she has the perfect body type because she has all the right qualifications to be his new muse. Like I think it's his specific type that he's so gung-ho about, not necessarily like you have the best body figure of any woman I could possibly make a dress for. I think it's like you push my buttons.
Yeah, I think his type of girl too is one that he can dominate. Like he can.
Or that's what he thinks at first,
right? Yeah. Well, yeah. So at first, before his type of girl was one that like he can tell to do whatever, and she'll do it. And then of course he meets Alma, and things change. But yeah.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying is like, was that more of his attraction than the actual looks? Because she doesn't look anything like that girl, or like some of what we would think of as like a perfect model or anything like that.
That's a good question. I'm not sure whether that's his type or he was looking for, she was already subservient being a waitress. Yeah, I'm not sure. It might have just been bullshit.
Okay. Anybody got anything else on they want to talk about?
Yeah. There's actually a couple shots in the movie that stood out to me, and I wanted to actually mention them. The first one is whenever, I believe it's after they get married, and they're in the snow, like on a mountain, and she's going to go skiing, and he's just going to chill, like, and wait for her by the cabin or whatever. And there's a shot of him in a chair with like the mountain behind him, and like the mountain takes up like the whole frame in the background. And I don't know, for some reason I thought that was like a really striking shot. Do you guys know what I'm talking about at all?
I remember the scene. I don't know if I remember that shot specifically.
Yeah, it was really good. Like I don't know. It was like there's the mountains like from the top to the bottom of the screen. Anyway, next time you watch it, be on the lookout for it.
Yeah, I think like individual shots sticking out and stuff like comes like on multiple viewings. I think, at least for me, like all the movies that I love the way they look and like have specific shots I love. Like I've always seen them more than once.
Sure.
Well, sorry. Oh, good.
Okay, sorry. Well, there's one other shot that I wanted to talk about also, and that is actually whenever he goes to the New Year's Eve party to go get her, and there's like a shot where he's like walking. It's like a sideways shot where it's kind of like panning, and he's walking through this crowd of people, and all these balloons start falling, and like they're disrupting the shafts of light that are coming down from the ceiling, and all the balloons are kind of making it discolored a little bit. And for some reason, I thought that was like a really beautiful shot.
Yeah, I remember the shot where those balloons first start falling. I don't know if that's the same shot that we're thinking of, but that one did stick out to me. It just has so much color and there's so much going on. It's really beautiful.
It reminded me of one of his shots in the Boogie Nights days.
Yeah, I think my favorite shot, just on the first one, is the one we talked about earlier, where she storms out to go to the New Year's Eve party, and then it's the shot from down the hallway, and then we just see him like lean out from behind the wall and look. Like I just think that shot, like, while it's not like super amazing, it's really, really funny.
Yeah,
and
it
like
is
tells you everything
Yeah.
about what's going on.
That was
Daniel
actually
Day-Lewis's head with that one shot.
what I was going to say too. But I think it is a really good shot. It's really simple, but just him, like us off in the distance and him leaning into the door frame, looking out is really, really good.
Yeah, you can almost see Cary Grant doing that shot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's a very screwball moment, like not played screwball at all.
No.
But I think like it's just one of those things that like things entering the frame in a funny way is funny.
Yeah. He just looks so like insecure when he leans in. He's like, "Are you really going?
She really got
like,
win?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it cuts straight to him, and he's right in front of the door.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know if he's looking through the peephole or just like standing there waiting for the door to open and her to come back.
And he's like
It's
pacing
good.
around. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, we did get some questions and comments on Facebook and Twitter, and I guess we'll start with Twitter. We got one from @WarStartsAtMidnight, and they asked, "Who would you back in a verbal throwdown between the Woodcock siblings?" And I'm going to throw this one to Chris first.
The sister, of course. Like, I think the sister, like I think it's clear that she won when she said, "I will run over you and there will be nothing left of you," or whatever. Like, I thought that was the best.
Yeah, definitely. Cyril, hands down. She, we saw them do a verbal throwdown, and she demolished him within moments. So,
Right.
Yeah, 100% agree. I am terrified for Daniel Day-Lewis if they get into a real match where they actually go back and forth more than like twice or however many times they go through in that movie. But like if she really starts to lay into, I'm terrified for him. So yeah, 100% the sister.
yeah. Sidebar, Leslie Manville, have you guys seen the movie by Mike Leigh, Another Year?
I have not.
No.
Oh, God. If you want to see this actress shine, watch that movie. She will tear out your heart in a good way.
Okay, and so moving on, we got a comment on Facebook, two actually, from Brian Eggert.
Thanks,
and hopefully
Brian.
Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. If not, I guess it could be Aguirre, silent T.
Yeah,
But
send in your complaint to
send in a
Justin.
phonic pronunciation next time, unless you don't care if I pronounce your name right. But he wanted to ask, and I guess you already kind of asked this, Mike, but I'd love to hear the extent to which you think Anderson is just making a comedy with this film.
Yeah, I'll sit this one out since I've talked at length about that.
Oh, I mean, I agree. We talked about it being, it's an absurdist comedy is what I would call it. Like if I were to recommend it to a non-movie watching friend, like a movie watching friend that likes general mainstream stuff, I would say it's an absurdist comedy because it doesn't stick to the main. There, like we just watched the trailer for the new Amy Schumer film. Like that's a comedy. This is an absurdist comedy, right?
Yeah, so maybe the word just, like I wouldn't say it's just a comedy because it's absurdist as well. I guess
I was
sense.
saying that the Amy Schumer's just a comedy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the word just. Is he just making a comedy? I don't think so. I think there's more to it than that. Is there a lot of comedy in it? I think, Mike, you would agree that it was like on the second viewing. I think I do have that feeling of like There Will Be Blood. Like, the fourth time I watched the movie, like I probably found like everything in it funny at that point, right? I think that may happen with this one too. So I don't think that I don't think that he's necessarily wrong, and I don't know if he's actually asserting the same thing or just wants to know if that's what we think. But I don't think it's just
I read
comedy.
his article that he wrote, and he talked about it being a comedy. Okay. Mike, did you ever laugh out loud?
Yes, whenever the second time he told the doctor, he's like, "Didn't I tell you to fuck off?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
did.
laughed out loud then.
I
I
made
laughed
noise.
out loud when he peeked around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of comedy in
And
it.
there was chuckles in my
So-
theater.
Yeah,
from
mine
all
too.
stuff.
Like I
Oh.
maybe like 80% of comedy
Yeah,
and 20% other
there's,
stuff.
There's also one really great part when he's like, what is it? He's like, "Are you an assassin? Do you have a gun? Are you here to kill me?"
That was hilarious.
At breakfast?
Their fight, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
was
the
great.
Christopher Nolan thing. The kids will say that to him all the time. Like, that's so sorry, but a
Yeah, but
callback.
he's just so dramatic. It's just so like,
Yeah.
what a ridiculous man he is. And
Yeah.
it's great.
All right, so let's move on to Brian, his other comment, and he said, "There's something to be said for Anderson making films about ridiculous men of power. In There Will Be Blood, The Master, and Phantom Thread, he seems to be portraying men of power as pathetic and often funny for the petty ways they operate."
Yeah, that is very accurate to Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. I would say that's probably true even going back to Magnolia and maybe Boogie Nights. But
I mean, they take themselves too seriously.
Who in Boogie Nights do you think? Because I guess I'm thinking maybe like the Colonel.
Yeah, well, the Colonel, like, it's not as focused on, right? It's not as fleshed out, but I would say the Colonel and even maybe Burt Reynolds' character, right? Like, he's the patriarch of this pseudo family that these actors and filmmakers and crew are all in, and he's also kind of a dumbass. Like, he wants to make a good, true movie, and he thinks he does it with, like, the Brock Landers and Chest Rockwell porn movie that they come up with in, like, the hot tub. And it's, like, it's still a piece of shit, but, like, he's proud of it, right? So, like, I find that to be a little comical and goofy. Like, he's a serious, like, he has his dramatic moments, and, like, he's not to be laughed at, but at the same time, he is a little bit to be laughed at, I think. And I think that's probably true, especially of this movie. I think the one it rings the closest to is probably The Master. Both of those have these, like, patriarchal men in power type figures that are, in the case of The Master, he's kind of a silly buffoon. And in the case of Phantom Thread, he's almost a spoiled child.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the routine autism, sort of like childlike amount of spoiled that he is in a way at the beginning of the movie. So
and it's kind of a way to take that, like, tortured genius trope and do a little something different with it, right? Like, we're not just gonna watch Daniel Day-Lewis, like, abuse Alma for 2 hours because he's so smart and so good at his job, right? We didn't have to watch that, thank goodness. Like, it was she gave it just as good as she got it, right?
Yeah, and I think in this one, There Will Be Blood, Daniel Plainview, Daniel Day-Lewis's character, kind of wins in the end to an extent.
But he's also pretty buffoonish
in some ways.
And silly
he's very,
at the end. Yeah.
very buffoonish. He does win. In this one, I think he, in some ways, gets his comeuppance, even though he's okay with it. But he does, like, lose out ultimately from, like, his position of pure power.
If I had to choose a character that I had to be, I would pick Daniel Day-Lewis from Phantom Thread over Daniel Day-Lewis at the end of There Will Be Blood, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
He lost everything. He may have won his little battle, but he lost everything else.
Yeah, we lost everything else at the cost of
Spoilers for
winning
Blood.
that battle. That's an old enough movie, we can spoil it. So I guess I just don't know. I don't know that PTA is, like, I know he I guess, like, by making them funny and pathetic and stuff, like, he's sort of, like, condemning them, but they don't always seem to have, like, quite the same end result, do they? I'm not that familiar with The Master because, like I said, I've only saw it once in theaters forever ago.
No, I wouldn't say it's the same end result. I would say Phantom Thread is kind of the outlier. I would say There Will Be Blood and The Master, those powerful men. I think Lancaster Dodd is Philip Seymour Hoffman's name in The Master, and Daniel Plainview have very similar endings where I don't believe they get what they want and they're left empty with all their power. And I think in Phantom Thread, I think to subvert that same ending, he gives Reynolds Woodcock a companion to share with. And so he may have lost his absolute power, but I would argue that he's gained more of a purpose than Daniel Plainview or Lancaster Dodd probably got the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That was an interesting question. Thanks for writing in, guys.
Yeah, that was a good
really
question. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, I love these questions. I hope, get more. If either of you two or anybody else who's listening, please send us questions. These are super fun to, like.
These might be our only 2 listeners.
Well,
then
then
keep
those
sending
guys
them in.
definitely, you guys need to get on it because we like this. All right. Was there anything else?
I think I'm good. I really like this movie.
Yeah. Did talking about it change any of you guys' either of you guys' opinion? Did it make you
It probably
more interesting.
deepened it a little bit, and it was shot in 70 millimeter. You could go see this on IMAX. It'd take up the whole screen.
It looked a lot like The Master.
Was that 70 millimeter as well?
Yeah, it
That
was.
yeah.
Which I also found that movie to be very pretty as well.
I think Master wasn't it shot in 65 and then blown up to 70 for projection?
That's probably true. But
Yeah.
I watched a 70 millimeter print of it. I know that.
Yeah, I think I did too.
I think the Master
not
looks
Phantom Thread.
slightly better than this movie, but it's also got better locale. This is all like in a house in like gloomy England.
All right, so moving on. Last thing, what is you guys' favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie? Go, Chris.
It's got to be Punch Drunk Love. Like I will say Boogie Nights and Magnolia got me into movies because that came out at the time where I was young and they made me interested in film. But Punch Drunk Love for me just is his best. The color in that movie, Emily Watson and Adam Sandler gives there is a moment where Adam Sandler blushes, and as an actor, blushing is a real emotion. You can't control whether you blush or not, and so it's amazing to see Adam Sandler gives. And it's really a shame that he wasn't nominated for an Oscar that year. But yeah, so probably his best performance ever. I haven't seen the what was the one he came out with Ben Stiller and Dustin Hoffman. Just recently, it was a Netflix movie.
The Meyerowitz stories.
Yeah, I want to see that, so I haven't seen that. And supposedly he's really good in that as well.
Yeah, I hear that's good.
So I'll pass it off to you, Mike.
Real quick,
Okay.
before we go to my favorite, Chris, have you seen and any listeners, if you haven't seen this, you should look it up. Have you seen the video of the analysis of Punch Drunk Love of the Superman costume? Analysis?
Oh, yes. I need to watch it again. It's been a while.
Yeah. Anyone listening to this who has seen Punch Drunk Love and does not know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and search for.
Well, we can put a link in the show notes.
Yeah,
right?
We'll link it. But it's a pretty fascinating take on Punch Drunk Love that will make you want to rewatch it probably pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't want to say what that take is in case anyone's listening who hasn't seen Punch Drunk Love, but do yourself a favor, go watch Punch Drunk Love and then look up that video. Even if you hate Punch Drunk Love, go look up that video because it's fascinating.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, it has something to do with Superman, so that's all you need
that's
to
what
know.
That's what I didn't want to say.
Oh, I
Well, he already
it earlier.
said Superman.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mentioned
All right.
it earlier, but that's all I'll say.
Okay. All right.
All right, so
Well, then that's fine.
my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie today
Yeah, that's
would
Good point,
probably be Boogie Nights. It's always a toss-up between Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood for me, but most days it's Boogie Nights. I think that movie is almost perfect. It's epic in the sense that it covers so much time and so many characters. It's hilarious. It's suspenseful. It's just got everything. You got Philip Seymour Hoffman in one of his best roles that to this day will still tear my heart out. You have Don Cheadle as like this guy who doesn't have an identity and he's just searching for a look. And you got John C. Reilly being awesome. It's just great. It's just a great time. And it's everything that I really ever want from movies is probably in that movie.
It's really good. I agree.
Yeah, I can't argue. I mean, all of them, you could pick any one of them. I actually haven't seen Inherent Vice, so
You can't pick that one, in my opinion.
But you could
That's a wrong answer.
You could pick any of them, and I would back you on it. I'm like, they're all really good. So,
Does that make it my turn?
I think Boogie Nights and Magnolia are really showy compared to his other ones, like with the one shots and stuff like that. And then he kind of gets smaller with his later.
I feel like he's gotten bored with like normal movie structure after Magnolia. He's just like, I'm just here to entertain me from now on.
And me as well, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, now it's your turn, Justin. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. No, it's okay. Okay, well, at the risk of being boring, I also have to pick Punch Drunk Love. I think it oftentimes, I'm sorry, I think it oftentimes, when I watch one of his movies, at least like from Boogie Nights to There Will Be Blood, whenever I watch one, usually afterwards I end up thinking, you know what, that's like his best movie.
Yeah.
Like immediately when it's done. And as time goes on and that feeling of having just watched it goes away, I always kind of come back to Punch Drunk Love as being like the one that I'm almost like, I'm always ready to rewatch it, like no matter when the last time I watched it was. And I think that There Will Be Blood is probably his masterpiece, and that would be like my second choice. I think it's quite perfect, and I don't know that he'll actually top that from like a on paper being a great movie sense, I guess. But there's just something about Punch Drunk Love that like really speaks to me personally, and I think part of it is just how risky of a movie it really is. Like, one, to take Adam Sandler, and who at the time was in nothing but his like Adam Sandler comedies, like Happy Gilmore, Mr. Deeds, 8 Crazy Nights, and he was just doing his Adam Sandler thing, and to take him and put him in this role and have him do what he does, and like even he got me when the movie came out, because I wasn't into film then, and I watched the movie expecting an Adam Sandler movie, and I didn't get it, and I've like didn't know what I was watching the first time. I was like, I don't understand this fucking movie. Like, and of course, as I got older, watched more films, watched Boogie Nights and Magnolia, and then went to Punch Drunk Love again. I got it, but like it's very risky in that sense, like upsetting audience sense, I guess. And then there's like things with like the scene where he gets really pissed and he destroys like an entire like bathroom, like
Except for the soap dispenser, which you can't rip off the wall.
yeah. Well, like if you listen to the sound in that movie, I think it's straight up like the sound of him actually doing it, and it is blown out, right? Like it is recorded at way too high of a level, right? And I think that's probably something that just happened, and Paul Thomas Anderson was like, you know what, let's leave it in there, right? Like you can, because a lot of times what you're doing with like sound editing specifically is like take the movie making out of the movie with your sound, and that's one thing. Like typically I think they would go in and replace all of those sound effects and like Foley the whole thing and not leave in distorted bad audio. Like the audio is straight up bad. Like go listen to it again and pay attention to the audio in that scene. It's awful. And then you have the scenes where like the truck is following them as they're coming out of the restaurant, but like
they turn the corner.
Yeah, but it's very clear that the truck has a light on top of it and it's lighting them.
Oh, does it? I didn't know that. I never saw that.
Yeah, like I mean, you can't see the light, you can't see the stuff, but like it's just like unrealistic, and you can see the movie making in it in a lot of ways, and it's like very like French New Wave and New Wave in its attitude. Like I just really like it.
I concur.
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
I always,
now that I've rambled and got myself excited.
Yeah, I'd like to buy the Criterion for Punch Drunk Love soon.
Oh, I have it, and I haven't watched it yet, and I hate myself for that because I've only seen it on like DVD. I think it was on HD and Netflix, but
what special features does it have? Because I had the special edition one that they released.
Honestly, I think it has all of the same ones. I don't know that it has anything different, although I'd have to double check.
I know Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't do commentary tracks, but I would hope that they're.
He did for Boogie Nights, and it's my favorite commentary track ever.
Boogie Nights and then Magnolia. Have you seen the short film, like the making of?
Oh,
yeah, it's not short, but it's long, but it's great.
Yeah, that's actually it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah. There's also like the scenes of him like joking around with Philip Seymour Hoffman on set and stuff, which are pretty great.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for this show.
Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you, listener. And also we have to thank Jake Wagner Russell for our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of it, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Yeah, like, follow, and subscribe, and review us on iTunes. Tell your friends about us. Tell your mother, your brother, and your father. Also go to Facebook.com.
But not your brother.
The other brother.
Not that guy.
Tell the other
You don't
brother.
want to tell that guy.
Facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast is where to find us on that. Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. And email us at casuallycriterion@gmail.com.
And don't forget about the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/casuallycriterion.
And email us in your Oscar picks so you can pick a movie for us.
All right. And by the way, we will have a bonus episode in a few days over one of the Best Picture nominees, Get Out. So that's been out for a few months. So if If you don't want to listen to it, we understand. But if not, be on the lookout for that episode coming soon.
Awesome. So till next time, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.